Picture this. A clear night over the Pacific Ocean, an oil tanker cuts through calm waters 280 miles west of Guam. The night watchman scans the starlit sky and spots something unusual, a vapor trail moving east to west overhead. He tracks it as it passes behind a cloud. Then the night turns to day. An explosion, intensely luminous, lights up the entire deck of the ship. We're about to explore one of aviation's most baffling mysteries, a flight that disappeared into thin air. So, stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for extreme turbulence, because this is Final Boarding Call.
Dance, 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 body, 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 dance, 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 dance.
Hello, and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I am your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
I'm still Zach.
He's still Zach.
I'm still Zachy.
I love that. Before we dive in, please rate, review, subscribe, and absolutely tell a friend about our podcast. And email us if you screenshot that you gave us a 5-star review or that you told a friend about it. We will send you some stickers. And Paul, I got your email and I totally forgot to email you back, but your stickers are on the way. So thank you for your email.
Don't feel bad. She forgets to text me back too.
I so do. But know that I got it. I loved it. Thank you for your 5-star review. Stickers are en route. So Zach, I got a little inspired for this week because I think it was 2 weeks ago, we told a story where one of the victims of the plane crash was a key advisor for the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that there is an amazing flight mystery pertaining to the Vietnam War. Okay. March 15th, 1962. It marks an important date in American military history, though most Americans have never heard of it. According to the U.S. Army's Center of Military History, this was officially the first day of what they call the advisory period of the Vietnam War. But here's the thing. In early 1962, the United States was still publicly denying any serious combat involvement in Vietnam. The 1954 Geneva Accords, which had ended French colonial rule in Indochina, strictly limited the number of foreign military personnel allowed in Vietnam. The U.S. was technically in violation of this treaty, so everything had to be done very quietly, with what you might call plausible deniability.
Look that way.
Look that way.
Knows?
And that is where our story today is going to come in. Flying Tiger Line was a civilian cargo airline founded after World War II by 10 former pilots from the famous Flying Tigers, a volunteer group that had fought for China against Japan during the war. Their planes featured distinctive, shark-faced nose art that became iconic. You
Very
know
well
these.
Known. Yeah.
You know these. Listener, you know this. You're picturing it.
If you're into cars like we are, it's on 3 out of 10.
And they think they're so unique.
So special.
I love it. After the war, these pilots bought surplus military aircraft and they started a cargo company. But Flying Tiger Line also had a special arrangement with the U.S. military. The Civil Aeronautics Board, which is the government agency that regulated airlines back during this time, had given Flying Tiger an exemption that allowed them to operate military charter flights. So instead of U.S. military planes, with clear Air Force markings ferrying troops to Vietnam, the Pentagon contracted with Flying Tiger Line. Boom, baby.
Because it didn't just
Lawyered.
look like the military coming in. It was, we're undercover.
Civilian planes, civilian pilots, civilian flight attendants. Much harder for journalists or foreign governments to track. It's sneaky. On the evening of March 14th, 1962, at Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield, California, 96 passengers and 11 crew members prepared to board a Flying Tiger Line aircraft. Among the passengers were 93 U.S. Army soldiers and 3 South Vietnamese military personnel. The identities of these 3 Vietnam soldiers remain unknown to this day. Their names have never been released.
Released or identified. Maybe they don't even know.
I'm sure someone knows because they got on this plane. Somebody had to add them to a list.
They took a crazy cab and just parked right inside.
Great. The 93 American soldiers were described in early press reports as jungle troops and army rangers, which probably makes you picture guys with rifles and camouflage. But these men were something else entirely. According to official accident investigation and family accounts, these soldiers were mainly highly trained electronics and communications specialists. They didn't come from one unit. They had been pulled from bases across the United States, hand-picked for this, in quotations, specific mission. And the mission itself remains classified.
Allegedly.
Here is what we do know. Based on research by military historians, we know that many of these soldiers were likely part of the Army Security Agency, or the ASA, the Army's Signals Intelligence Branch. So think of the ASA as the Army's version of the NSA. Their job was intercepting and analyzing enemy radio communications, using direction-finding equipment to locate enemy positions and conducting electronic surveillance. And Zach,
fancy job.
I don't know, I've only watched 30 seconds of that Navy show that you're watching right now, but every time I walk in, there's somebody looking at the screen and they're like, I can pinpoint their location. It's a decoy beacon. It's a this, that, or the other. And that is what I am picturing with this.
Last Ship on Netflix. Shout it out.
Yeah. It probably came out a long time ago because we are always so late to the game.
I know that there's at least 3 seasons.
Cool. In March of 1962, the U.S. was setting up what are called SIGINT stations. SIGINT. So this
SIG interceptions.
Signals intelligence.
Oh, dang.
You were so close, though, and I love your confident
Taking
enthusiasm.
random guesses. Well,
Yep.
if you say it with confidence and then you're right, people are just like, this dude knows everything.
That is impressive. Throughout South Vietnam, they are setting these up, and the goal is to intercept North Vietnamese and Viet Cong communications. These 93 men that are on this plane were probably sent to establish or staff those listening posts. But because this was all technically illegal, the U.S. needed to be able to deny that these were active duty military personnel. That is very important. So, civil airline. And these soldiers were ordered to leave behind anything that could identify them as U.S. military. Anything.
What's your name? Bob Joe.
It's pretty interesting. Donald Sargent was a 22-year-old specialist from Cornish, Maine. He'd enlisted right out of high school, served once, gotten out, and then according to his niece, Jennifer Kirk, this is, quote, he was pulled back in on a special mission handpicked by President John F. Kennedy.
Oh.
Shit, this dude's got some skills. Before he left Travis Air Force Base, something happened that his family would never forget. Donald came upstairs to say goodbye to his sister-in-law. I just need one more hug, he said, and she hugged him. And then he headed downstairs to the car. And then he came back. One more hug. And then he did it again. And he came back a third time. And finally he said, I gotta go. I don't know when I'll be back. He was ordered to leave his dog tags and any personal identification behind.
Feels risky.
Whatever this is feels very kamikaze. James Henry Taylor from Olive Branch, Mississippi, left his wedding ring at home, something that he had never done before. Sergeant First Class Raymond Bill Myers sent a postcard from Hawaii that simply read, "Tell the kids hello, love forever."
Ominous.
So here's what's really eerie. Multiple families who did not know each other reported eerily similar conversations with loved ones. Sergeant Howard Gallipow Jr. told his wife before leaving, I don't think I'm going to be coming home from this one. Okay. Yeah, Specialist Roger Oliver told his father the same thing, that he would not be coming back, and asked him to take care of his pregnant wife.
I know that once you sign up for the military, you don't really get to say, no, I'm not going to do that, but
This is obviously a suicide mission.
I feel like I would just immediately be AWOL, just be like, sorry guys, not doing that.
I'm out. Jane Wendell East, whose father, Sergeant First Class John Wendell, was on the flight, told reporters, the day my dad volunteered to go, he went to my mom and said, Mommy, I think I signed my death warrant. I don't know what the military said in the briefing for this mission, but I have learned that several others said the same thing. So these men had attended some sort of mission briefing, and whatever they had been told in that briefing made them believe that they were heading into extreme danger.
And almost certain death.
Yes. But here is what is strange. If they feared what awaited them in Vietnam, why say goodbye at Travis Air Force Base in California? They were about to spend 3 days making refueling stops across the Pacific. So they could have, in theory, written letters, made phone calls from Hawaii or Guam. But they all said goodbye in California before that flight took off. As if the journey itself, the second they were taking off from California, they knew that they were in very real danger. The aircraft waiting for them at Travis was a Lockheed L-1049H Super Constellation. The Super Constellation was one of the most distinctive aircraft ever built. Imagine a sleek, dolphin-like fuselage with a triple tail design. And a massive, I know, this is so weird, 4 massive propeller engines mounted on wings that stretch 183 feet across. I'm going to show you a picture of this thing because it's cuckoo bananas. Check out this.
Just like what you've seen in movies.
Gosh, it is
I think it's the plane that they use in
60s.
Con Air. I don't know.
Guys, look it up because it is a funky looking thing. So, the Constellation was designed back in 1939 at the request of Howard Hughes, who wanted an aircraft that could fly coast to coast nonstop, which at the time was
unheard of.
Crazy. The Super Constellation was a stretched version that entered service in 1951. This particular aircraft had been manufactured in 1957, making it right around 5 years old at the time of our story. It had logged 17,224 flight hours, which is basically 2 full years in the air.
Okay.
It was powered by 4 Wright R3350 engines, each producing over 3,000 horsepower.
It's a pretty solid number.
It's pretty solid. So these engines were powerful, but they had a reputation.
Of course they did.
Pilots sometimes joked that the Super Constellation was the world's best tri-motor because those engines failed so frequently that you often ended up flying on 3. Sounds like a Subaru. Boom, boom, ching. Because you always have a cylinder that fails.
Yes, I know.
Thank you. I'll be here all night. The early versions of these engines had magnesium alloy crankcases. That's the outer housing of the engine. And if one caught fire, which I guess happened,
Yeah.
the magnesium would burn at nearly 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's pretty warm.
It's hot enough to melt through an aircraft's wing structure in seconds. By 1962, the engine design had improved, but they were still notoriously temperamental, especially on long, over-water flights where they were being pushed to their limits.
Sounds right.
It sounds great. Let's get on. The flight crew was very experienced. Captain Gregory P. Thomas was 48, and he had over 19,500 flight hours.
That's a lot.
This guy can fly. He had been a military pilot during World War II, and he had served as one of Bob Hope's pilots during the USO tours.
Okay.
So this
cool.
guy is like, he's the real deal. First Officer Robert Wish, also 48, had logged over 17,500 hours. Both of these pilots are...
They just be flying.
Yeah, yes. Yep. And they know the Pacific route very well. The flight plan called for 4 refueling stops between California, which is where we're taking off, and Saigon, which is where we're supposed to finish. So we are going to stop at Honolulu, Wake Island, Guam, and Clark Air Base in the Philippines. Those are our stops.
Yeah.
The plane departed Travis at 5:45 Greenwich Mean Time, also known as GMT, on March 14th. And that's the evening of the 13th in California, because the time zone is trippy. The first leg to Honolulu took 12 hours.
From California?
That is a long time. I don't know what you're doing.
A lot of
Maybe they were
loop-de-loops.
doing some serpentine, you know.
Evasive maneuver.
But that flight should take 6 hours. Maybe that's just because planes are way more powerful these days. Maybe they're going half the speed. That would make sense because it took 12 hours instead of 6. Upon landing in Hawaii, there was minor maintenance performed on the ignition systems of engines 1 and 3.
Oh, just the odd ones.
Just the odd ones. They're the odd ones out. Replacing some spark plugs and ignition leads, which was very routine for these engines. There was also a small delay when the senior flight attendant complained that the crew rest facilities weren't adequate for a long Pacific crossing. So they added an extra mattress. There you go.
There we go. Very good.
And the plane took off again. Mattress on, flight attendant happy, plane takeoff. At Wake Island, more maintenance was performed on the ignition systems.
On 2 and 4.
Oh, God. For this one, I don't know. It just says, quote, the ignition systems. The 4 original flight attendants were also replaced with a fresh crew.
Okay.
So we've got Patricia Wassam. We've got Hildegard Mueller, Barbara Jean Wamsley, and Christelle.
Oh.
I know. It's not Crystal for sure. It's got like cool spelling. Christelle Diana Ryder. And all of these flight attendants are actually originally from California. So all four had completed emergency training on the super constellation. Everything up until this point, normal. No red flags. The plane departed Wake Island and arrived at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam at 11:14 Greenwich Mean Time on March 15th. At Guam, the aircraft was refueled and given a routine check. No mechanical problems were found.
Didn't replace any ignition pieces this time.
But the Civil Aeronautics Board report later noted something very important about this stop. The aircraft was left unattended in a dimly lighted area for a period of time.
Okay.
The report specifically stated that the ramp areas at Guam could be accessed without challenge and that anyone could have approached the aircraft. In 1962, airport security
It
didn't exist. It just didn't. So the plane sat in a poorly lit corner of the airfield for over an hour and a half and nobody was watching it. So after 1 hour and 33 minutes on the ground, the aircraft departed again from Guam at 12:57 Greenwich Mean Time. The next leg to Clark Air Base in the Philippines was scheduled to take 6 hours and 19 minutes. The plane carried enough fuel for 9.5 hours. We love having plenty
extra
of fuel. That's great. And the weather forecast looked good. There was not even significant turbulence expected. The flight plan called for cruising at 18,000 feet. The takeoff weight was well within limits. Everything is good. We are good.
in theory.
Shortly after takeoff, Guam Air Traffic Control established radar contact with the flight. As was standard procedure, radar contact was terminated once the aircraft was 100 miles from Guam. Beyond that distance, they'd communicate by radio only. Over the next hour and a half, the flight crew made very typical radio calls. At one point, they requested permission to climb from their initial altitude of 10,000 up to 18,000. It was approved. At 22 hours, Greenwich Mean Time, which is 2:22 in the afternoon in London, or around 10:22 at night, local Pacific time. Time zones are crazy. Captain Thomas made his final radio call to Guam. He reported the aircraft's position, estimated that they would reach Clark Air Base in about 5.25 hours, and noted that they had 8 hours and 12 minutes of fuel remaining. The Civil Aeronautics Board report specifically notes no indication of difficulty was given in this or any of the previous messages. This is so routine. Everybody is very calm and professional. An hour later, at 15:39 hours, Guam tried to contact Flight 739 for its scheduled 15:30 position report. Silence. They tried again. Nothing. They tried continuously and the aircraft never responded. At 1600 hours, I knew how to say that one, Guam declared the flight to be in uncertainty phase, which is aviation terminology meaning there is concern about the safety of an aircraft. At 1633, the status was upgraded to alert phase, meaning there is a real issue with the aircraft's safety. And at 1943 hours, when the plane failed to arrive in Manila at all, the status was changed to distress phase, meaning that authorities believe the aircraft is in grave danger. Search and rescue operations were launched from both Guam and the Philippines. At 22:27 hours, when the aircraft's fuel would have been completely exhausted. Flying Tiger Line Flight 739 was officially declared lost.
Wow.
So somewhere between that routine call at 10:22 p.m. and the next scheduled check-in, which was only an hour later, 170 people and an entire aircraft vanished. But someone had seen something. About 280 miles west of Guam, an oil tanker called the SSTL Lenzen was making its routine journey, and the ship was registered in Liberia, but it was operated by Standard Oil Company. It was around 1:30 in the morning local time on March 16th. The night was clear with scattered clouds. The sea was calm. The night watchman was on duty when he noticed something unusual overhead. So I'm going to do the math here. So this is 15:30 Greenwich Mean Time. And their last call was at, let's see. So they missed their 15:30 position report.
Okay.
So this is literally at the time where they should be calling and giving that report. Okay. So the night was clear. There were a few scattered clouds. The sea was very calm. The night watchman was on duty when he noticed something unusual overhead. A vapor trail moving from east to west across the sky. He tracked it as it moved. It passed behind a cloud, and then everything changed. The captain and crew of the SSTL Lenzen would later describe what they saw to investigators. The explosion was intensely luminous. It was bright enough to illuminate the entire deck of the ship.
Okay, that's a big exploser.
Yes, it consisted of a white center surrounded by reddish-orange glow with radial lines of colored light shooting outward. The explosion occurred in two distinct pulses, each lasting 2 to 3 seconds. Then they saw two objects falling from the sky, two fireballs of unequal brightness and size, descending at different speeds toward the ocean. The ship's second officer, who was monitoring the radar, reported seeing a small bright target on the screen approximately 17 miles away, bearing 270 degrees west. As the objects fell, the radar contact grew stronger, and then it vanished.
Oh.
The captain immediately ordered the ship to change course, using the stars to estimate the position of where the objects had fallen. You know, I love a little wayfinding situation.
Yes, you do.
That's how navigation worked in 1962. Without GPS, you have to use the stars. He directed this ship toward those coordinates. For the next 5.5 hours, this crew searched the area with searchlights, scanning the dark water for any signs of wreckage, debris, life rafts, survivors, and they found nothing. Nothing.
Not a clue.
Not
That's crazy.
Anything. No oil slick, no random floating shoe, nothing. The crew initially thought that they had witnessed some kind of military exercise. Maybe it was like a missile that just exploded,
Like,
and
in the middle of
then
nowhere,
it's just
they blew this thing up.
Correct. The area was known for U.S. Navy operations, so they assumed, after not finding anything, that what they had seen was just an intentional test. It wasn't until the next day when they learned a whole-ass plane had gone missing in that area that they were like, oh, shit.
Guys.
When the tanker's report reached military authorities, a massive search operation was launched, one of the largest peacetime air and sea searches ever conducted in the Pacific. Over the next 8 days, more than 1,300 people would participate in the search. 48 aircraft flew continuous sorties, which is a term, logging over 3,400 flight hours. 8 surface vessels led by the U.S. Navy destroyer escort U.S. Bear. They combed 144,000 square miles of ocean.
Wow.
Yeah. So the destroyer is U.S. Bexar, but I don't know if its code name is Bear. Anyway, I have Bexar and then I have Bear written next to that. So one of those. But to put that in perspective, this search and the search radius, that is larger than the entire state of New Mexico. For 8 solid days, dozens of ships and planes were engaged. They found driftwood. They found a piece of tubing that had no connection to the aircraft. The official report says, quote, "There was nothing found that could be remotely associated with the plane." Air Force Major General Theodore R. Milton told the press, "The chances of finding any survivors are now about 1 in infinity."
That's not really what the families want to hear.
Those are not super great odds. The search area included the exact coordinates reported by the tanker crew. The ocean depth in that area ranged from 15,000 to 20,000 feet deep. So that is more than 4 miles down. And we talked about this in our episode last week because that ship ended up being 15,000 feet on the bottom of the ocean. And that is over 4 miles down. And the Titanic rests at about 12,500 feet. So this is significantly more than that. In 1902, the technology for searching that did not exist, period. Even if pieces of the aircraft had been reached, had settled on the ocean floor, there is absolutely no way that we were going to be able to find that. But here's what puzzles experts. The lack of any floating debris is bizarre. That's just bizarre. A super constellation carried seat cushions that were designed to be used as flotation devices.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing. It also had life vests on board. It had luggage, personal items, things that should float. And if the plane exploded at 18,000 feet, debris should have scattered over a massive area.
Yeah, for miles.
Yes. They found nothing. Now, there is a possible explanation. Navigation in 1962 relied on systems like LORAN, which is long-range navigation, which used radio signals from shore stations to estimate positions. LORAN had a margin of error that could place a ship several miles away from where it actually was.
But they combed several miles.
Oh, they combed the entire state of New Mexico. The tanker crew estimated their position using the stars, which is also not super precise. So I guess it's possible that they were maybe a couple miles away, but again...
They still would have found something.
Yes, we are talking like they took that position and then drew
a giant
whole
box around
state
it.
around it. And they searched and found nothing. A year after the disappearance, the Civil Aeronautics Board published its final report. It's a frustrating document to read because the investigators clearly wanted to give families answers.
But they had none.
But they had nothing. The report concluded, a summation of all relevant factors tends to indicate that the aircraft was destroyed in flight. However, due to the lack of any substantiating evidence, the board is unable to state with any degree of certainty the exact fate of this flight. In the absence of certainty, theories have...
Begin to, yeah.
Okay, you ready to jump into some theories? I know you love this.
I do.
The first theory, sabotage. It's probably the most obvious. The flight was sitting alone for an hour and a half, and the theory is that someone placed a bomb on it when they had access to the plane that they should not have had access to. Someone with bad intentions could have walked right up to that thing and planted a bomb.
That still doesn't explain the lack of stuff.
That is super bizarre. Flying Tiger Line's executive vice president, Frank Lynott, told reporters, so far, as blowing completely apart, there's nothing that powerful aboard. The fuel tank just doesn't go off like that. And he had a point. The Super Constellation's fuel tanks were designed with multiple safety features to prevent them from just like, boom, exploding.
Oops, pop.
Even a catastrophic failure wouldn't typically cause an explosion visible from 17 miles away. But who would want to sabotage the flight? I apologize, listeners. My senior dog, Benji, is blind and deaf, and at night he just gets a little anxious, and he's doing tippy-tappies around our kitchen. So
But it's better than the zoomies he was doing 4 minutes ago.
he hit the zoomies earlier, which is very dangerous because he can't see. So he zoomies into things. But I just wanted to explain if there's random tapping happening. So Zach, who would want to sabotage this flight? Communists. Communist agents.
Bloody communists.
They're trying to prevent these signals intelligence specialists from reaching Vietnam. However, again, you guys, purely speculation. We've gotten zero evidence. Nothing. The second theory is mechanical failure, specifically an engine fire. Like what I talked about before, where these engines are somewhat known to catch fire and they burn extremely hot.
Yeah.
Guess what? They could have caught on fire and they could have burned extremely hot. And
quickly.
Like I told you all earlier, this aircraft had experienced some ignition problems at some of our previous stops. So engines number 1 and 3 at both Honolulu and Wake Island were serviced. It was spark plug replacements, nothing crazy, but it does show that these engines were not,
Tip-top.
super happy. Could one of them have caught fire catastrophically? Here's the issue with this theory. If there were a simple engine fire, why didn't the crew send a distress call? Captain Thomas had time to make a routine position report at 10:22 p.m. If an engine caught fire after that, he would have had at least a few seconds to radio and give somebody a heads up. Professional pilots are trained to aviate first, which is fly the plane, then navigate, then communicate. But even in the worst emergencies, there's almost always time for at least a quick mayday. This flight never sent one. And the third theory.
You say that. This will be my favorite one.
It is the one that modern Flying Tiger Line historians prefer. They find this to be most plausible. Friendly fire. The vapor trail seen by the tanker crew before the explosion suggests something moving through the air toward the plane.
Okay.
Like a missile. An aircraft experiencing mechanical failure typically does not have a vapor trail quite like that before exploding. In 1962, U.S. Navy ships routinely conducted training exercises in the Western Pacific. Could this flight have accidentally wandered into a missile test range? Could our own Navy have misinterpreted this flight as an enemy?
Still definitely possible.
It's really crazy. So this theory would explain several things. 1, vapor trail. 2, the government's extreme hesitancy and reluctancy to release anything about this.
Any information.
Anything. Every record about this flight has been sealed. Why? It also explained the refusal to add the soldiers' names to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. If the U.S. military accidentally shot down one of its own planes carrying 93 soldiers, that would be a catastrophe that would be insane.
But
But
still,
again,
none of this is going to make zero evidence of a crash anywhere.
it's really fascinating, Zach. Where did all that go?
Even the giant 5-inch guns and all that stuff, they're not going to
Where did it go?
do this.
I don't know. I don't have the answer, unfortunately. So that brings us to the most disturbing part of this story, which is the wall of silence. Because the flight was chartered from a civilian company, the US government and military have consistently claimed that they have no records about it. Over the past 6 decades, families have filed Freedom of Information Act requests with the Army, Air Force, Defense Department, National Archives, State Department, and the CIA. They have all come back with nothing. No records, no documents, no passenger manifests, not even a mission order. A historian at Travis Air Force Base told Stars and Stripes in 2003 that he searched their archives exhaustively and he found nothing about this flight, as if it never existed. The soldiers' military personnel files have been heavily redacted.
We don't know what these words were.
What little remains often contradicts what families were told. Donald Sargent was supposedly a supply sergeant, according to his file, but his family insists that he was in communications and intelligence, which is crazy. They altered
His job.
job. Several soldiers' files listed them in positions that do not match their actual specialties. It's as if someone went through and systematically removed any indication of what these men actually did or why they were being sent to Vietnam.
What they would have done.
Yep. Here's what makes this even more frustrating for families. Without official documentation proving that these men were on a military mission, the
No life insurance, no claims.
The Department of Defense has repeatedly denied requests to add their names to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., which I think is even a bigger slap in the face than refusing like a life insurance policy. These are men who died on their way to some sort of insane mission.
Yeah.
And they have been completely unrecognized in any form. The DoD's position is that the deaths occurred outside the combat zone and were not the result of hostile action. And the families point out, how can you prove that it was hostile action if you won't release the records? How can you say that they weren't in a combat zone if you won't admit where they were going and what they were supposed to be doing?
You can't get a job without experience.
It's insane. In 2021, Senator Gary Peters of Michigan introduced Senate Bill S. 1891, called the Flying Tiger Flight 739 Act. The bill sought to force the Department of Defense to add the 93 soldiers' names to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It was supported by senators from Tennessee, Michigan, and New Hampshire. The bill died in committee. It never even got a vote. One family member told a newspaper in frustration it's almost as if they didn't exist as soldiers, as if they don't matter and their deaths don't matter. So let's talk about what is happening currently. So for the families left behind, March 16th, 1962 was the day their lives shattered, absolutely shattered. Jennifer Kirk, who was Donald Sargent's niece, told reporters that her grandmother received notifications by telegram. A cab driver pulled up to the house, honked the horn, and handed a telegram to a neighbor. The cabbie didn't even get out of the car.
Interesting.
The telegram read, "The Secretary of the Army has asked me to express his deep regrets that your son, Specialist Donald A. Sargent, was a passenger aboard a chartered aircraft that was reported missing while in flight over the Pacific Ocean. You have my deepest sympathy during this trying time." That's insane. There was no military funeral, obviously, because there is no recognition
There's no
of them
claim.
being correct.
Yeah.
There was no honor guard, no folded flag presented to the family. The Army paid out Donald's life insurance, $264, and that's it. That's it. The government did provide a headstone marker, but Donald's grandfather had to go pick it up himself. They wouldn't even deliver it. And this pattern repeated across all 93 families. This is just like, it's insane to me. The families of the civilian crew members faced similar struggles. Captain Gregory Thomas's father waited for his son until he died in the 1980s, still holding out hope that somehow he had not died. In the years since, families have tried repeatedly to get recognition for their loved ones. Some have written letters to every congressman and senator they could think of. Some have filed lawsuit after lawsuit trying to force the government to release the records. Some have hired PIs. Some have contacted oceanographers and deep-sea exploration companies, because now, obviously, we're in 2026, so the technology has come a long way.
Yeah, it does exist now.
Yes. Nothing has worked. The government's position has never changed. No records, no recognition, no answers. In 2021, frustrated by decades of rejection from the government, a private citizen decided to take action. Morrill Worcester, the founder of Wreaths Across America, which is a nonprofit that places wreaths on veterans' graves, learned about Flight 739, and he was shocked that nothing had been done for these families. He donated land in Columbia Falls, Maine, where Wreaths Across America is based, and erected a granite monument bearing all 107 names.
Wow.
The 93 soldiers, 11 civil crew members, and the 3 South Vietnamese soldiers. Although we don't know that everybody's names, but they are all recognized on this memorial. This is what the inscription writes. Missing in action, presumed dead. Flying Tiger Line Flight 739 went missing on March 16, 1962, with 93 U.S. Army soldiers on board. These men and their flight crew perished in what would become one of the biggest aviation mysteries out of the Vietnam War era. The names of those who gave their lives and who remain missing are inscribed here, so they will be said aloud and their memory will live on. Oof, gosh. The families gathered for a dedication ceremony, and obviously at that ceremony, all 107 names were read aloud. And this monument has given the families some measure of peace, but it has not ended their fight. They are going to keep fighting, and good on them, because this story is insane. Zach, that is our story for today.
Okay, I've got the hot take.
Okay,
I've got a theory. I love to do this. I love to make these things up.
Where is the
see how they
Zach?
play. I don't have an answer for that.
Oh.
However, picture this.
Okay.
I said your line. It was fun.
You did. It was great.
Okay, so we know that they were all in the military and they were doing something super classified. If they hadn't gotten to their mission, then they hadn't done anything wrong and they would have been able to release all this information. However, I think it was a mission success. They were in a testing phase of some type of new bomb that just obliterated everything to where there was no evidence. And that's why they couldn't release any information. It's, yeah, this is the thing we were doing. This is the result of it. We can't give you any answers on it. That's why they couldn't be named.
Why would they kill all those people? That doesn't make sense.
Well,
If you're going to kamikaze a plane and test to see if you have a really destructive missile, which I assume is what you're getting at. They were testing some sort of...
Yeah, they were testing something.
Okay.
And
why would you have 90-something elite military specialists on that plane?
well, there's a lot of different ways to be elite. And at that time, they were fighting a physical war. So they may not have been thinking about them as that type of elite.
I just don't understand why they would have to be sacrificed.
I don't understand why anybody ever felt like somebody
I'm pulling
had to
apart
be.
your theory. That's what I'm doing. I'm challenging it.
You're challenging it. You're not pulling anything apart, though. Logically, yes, it doesn't make any sense, but it also doesn't make sense for a person to just go on a murder spree of others either.
Okay.
Just saying, it makes sense as to why they can't release the information.
It's fair.
Because
It's interesting.
if they never got to the mission in the first place, then nothing ever happened. There was no secret. Nothing bad was going on. They weren't breaking any laws.
Here's my alternate theory. The plane landed.
And they were all just trying to get away from their wives and families?
No, there's something else obviously could have happened in Vietnam, but what if they actually made it to the Philippines? The reason that they could never find plane wreckage is because that's not how these people died. The plane never blew up. It stopped communicating.
Buried in a
It
forest.
stopped communicating with radio stuff because the government didn't want a record of where the plane actually was.
Still mission success. They got somewhere that they weren't supposed to be.
Crazy.
And then it didn't work out well. But then what was the explosion?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Testing. It could have been, they said that was an area of Navy testing. They could have been testing something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, theories are crazy. These families deserve justice. These people deserve justice that were on that flight. Oh, boy. If this episode pissed you off, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
Just know this is my average day in the world. I want answers to everything.
This one's crazy.
And it doesn't work that way.
No, it does not. Ooh, send us an email. finalboardingcallpodcast@gmail.com. My poor senior dog. Give your dog some love.
He just stepped on a vacuum.
They get old and it's hard. He got stuck in a kitchen chair, between the legs of a kitchen chair for 10 minutes the other day. I had to come rescue him. And join us next time when we'll be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, love your dogs, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination. Goodbye.
Goodbye.